So this is for Buffy Season 1, Episode 4, Teacher's Pet. This episode is also one you can skip if you are trying to fast track the show. But here's the basic plot. One of Buffy's teachers, Dr. Gregory, sees how smart she is and knows she has potential. And he urges her to just do her schoolwork, which she apparently isn't doing. So he has an encouraging chat with Buffy, after which he is attacked by a giant bug that looks like a praying mantis. The giant bug then, obviously, thereafter takes on the role of the substitute teacher named Ms. French, not in bug form, in the form of a really beautiful woman. So this teacher is flirting with the young men in the classroom who are clearly drawn to her, and this giant bug substitute teacher lady seems to be seeking male virgins to mate with and kill like a giant praying mantis would do, clearly. So Ms. French, the substitute teacher / giant bug, lures in Xander for a sexy evening, and she invites him to her house and gives him a drink that she seems to have roofied, and she tries to mate with him. Buffy and the gang come to the rescue and kill the giant bug demon and save Xander and some other jock who she has locked in her basement, like you do. And we now know that Xander and this jock kid are both virgins, despite earlier in this episode trying to, talk up their game or whatever. The episode also kind of revisits Buffy's interest in Angel, who warns Buffy about a vampire that she slays in the course of this episode. He also lends her a jacket when she's cold and insists that she keep it when she tries to give it back to him. Buffy is clearly smitten. It's an interesting episode. Sexuality in high school is a crazy thing. Our identities and drives are developing in ways that we want to embrace and in ways that feel vulnerable or scary. But ultimately, relationships need to be something that everyone involved in wants. Throughout the course of this episode, Xander is angered that Buffy doesn't seem into him. But he's also sort of just desperate to have sex. As he finds by the end of the episode, his desperation may be a little bit dangerous. Well, most of us don't need to worry about giant bugs. We do need to worry about things like STIs and pregnancy, and so this episode may be a little bit heavy-handedly suggesting that nobody needs to rush into their first sexual experience. I don't think... we'll just leave that there for now. But Buffy approaches other issues of sexuality and virginity later on throughout the season, multiple times. And so we'll leave it here for now. But here are some things that happen throughout the course of the episode. We find out that Xander's very jealous of Angel. We find that Angel gave Buffy a leather jacket. Buffy doesn't do her homework. Cordelia eats a medically prescribed lunch as part of a diet. Xander's middle name is Lavelle, so Alexander Lavelle Harris. Xander is a virgin. Giles apparently went to Oxford, and Willow's last name is Rosenberg. Willow Rosenberg, Alexander Lavelle Harris, and Buffy Summers. So, what is this episode? What is it on about, right? So, Buffy is clearly being presented as a less than stellar student who is nonetheless smart and has a lot of potential. Cordelia seems to be unaware that anyone else in the world has needs. And Principal Flutie has this sort of ridiculous interaction with Buffy where he's talking about this tragedy that's happened with this teacher dying, and he says he's always there if, his students need a hug, but not a real hug because the school is sensitive to wrong touching. And it's a silly moment, but I think it's an interesting line to have in an episode where a teacher is preying on her students sexually. So what does this episode have to say about inappropriate relationships? It's important that any youth knows that adults in their lives should never have romantic links with them or engage in any wrong touching, clearly. It's a joke in this episode with Principal Flutie talking about hugs, but perhaps that's why the joke is in the episode, because we see how Ms. French is contrasted with an actual decent teacher, Dr. Gregory, who engages Buffy by trying to motivate academic excellence, not sexy time. Miss Mantis, however, is completely inappropriate with her students. While in this case she's literally a monster, this episode illustrates that any adult who engages in romantic or sexual activity with a minor is monstrous. In this case, the teacher gives minors alcohol, lowering their defenses. She roofies them. There's clearly some kind of pheromonal effect as well, but that's all part of the imaginary metaphor for really gross teachers and for a high school sex drive as well. But we should always be concerned about adults that are giving minors alcohol, especially if they're not your guardian and they don't have a right to do something like that. Ms. French is clearly in a position of power and manipulates students who can't see that manipulation because of their naivete, because of their attraction to her, because of whatever. In short, always be aware of the danger of age-inappropriate relationships, for sure. But also, we can see in this episode the developing love triangle situation between Buffy, Xander, and Willow, because Willow's clearly interested in Xander, Xander's clearly interested in Buffy. Buffy seems to be interested in Angel, and Angel seems interested in Buffy, and we don't really know if Buffy even knows that Xander's interested in her. It seems like she knows now. Xander's pretty aggressive in this episode, but I think it's also possible that Buffy could write that off as being part of the pheromones from the giant bug. So it's an interesting interaction, and it's interesting to see how Xander deals with this, because he does kind of get angry at Buffy in a way that seems a little bit uncharacteristic, but does anybody have any right to be angry when someone doesn't like them back? I don't think so, right? I don't think Willow is exhibiting anger at Xander for not liking her back. She mostly seems sad or disappointed. So I think that's another interesting thing to look at. How do these characters take rejection, as well as who are they seeking in their relationships? So yeah, this episode doesn't have too much going on under the surface. Season 1 can be hard. So this is episode 4, but episode 5 is next. And episode 5 is much better. I do recommend that you watch episode 5. It's called Angel, and it's called Never Kill a Boy on the First Date, and it leads up to episode 6, which is Angel. And I think that these two episodes are better. Angel is better than Never Kill a Boy on the First Date, but the next episode sort of delves into Buffy's love life a little bit and introduces us to some more mythology. We have some prophecy that suggests the Anointed One is going to rise in Sunnydale and lead Buffy to death. So that's what happens, and that's what the character's dealing with in the next episode, which is better than the last two, I think. But you can skip it if you want. So, yeah.